Ambassador Telris stood in the docking bay of Earth's Sol Station, his webbed hands trembling. His blue skin had turned pale with stress and his large eyes were red from crying. He had not slept in 3 days. Behind him, his small crew of advisors looked equally exhausted and frightened. The Keltharans were dying. His people, who had spent thousands of years creating beautiful art and studying the stars, were being eaten alive by monsters from the edge of the galaxy. The Vraken had come without warning, and they consumed everything in their path. Telris remembered the last transmission from Kelthera 7. The screaming had lasted for hours before the signal died. 2 billion people gone. Then Kelthera 12 fell silent 3 weeks later. Another billion souls vanished into the hungry darkness. Now the Vraken swarm was heading toward Kelthera Prime, the homeworld where 12 billion Keltherans waited for death to arrive. The Galactic Council had been useless. The Vryn Empire promised to send ships in 6 months. The Saltorian Federation offered thoughts and prayers. The Hexapod Collective said they would form a committee to study the situation. Everyone had excuses. Nobody was coming to help. Humanity was the last hope. The Keltherans had been friends with humans for 70 years, trading knowledge and culture. The humans seemed to enjoy Keltheran music and poetry. They were strange creatures, these humans, with their flat faces and tiny eyes. They lived on a death world that tried to kill them with weather and animals and diseases. But they had survived it all and reached the stars. More importantly, humans had weapons. Lots of weapons. More weapons than any other species in the galaxy. Other races whispered that humans were dangerous, that they had spent most of their history killing each other. The Keltharans had always dismissed these rumors. Humans seemed so friendly and curious during peacetime. Now Telris hoped those rumors were true. A human officer approached. She wore a dark blue uniform with gold markings on the shoulders. Her hair was pulled back tight and her face showed no emotion. This was Admiral Sarah Chen, commander of Earth's 3rd Fleet. Ambassador Telris, she said, her voice crisp and professional. I understand your people need help. Telris felt his gills flutter with anxiety. He had prepared a long speech. He had documents ready to offer humanity mining rights to 3 systems. He had brought cultural treasures to trade. He had authorization to give humans anything they wanted if they would just help. Admiral Chen, Telris began, his voice breaking slightly. The Vraken are at our doorstep. They have already taken 2 of our worlds. Our defense fleet is weak. We are not warriors. We need— How many hostiles? Admiral Chen interrupted. Telris blinked in confusion. I'm sorry? How many enemy ships are attacking your homeworld? Our sensors detected over 3,000 bioships, Telris said. They are organic vessels grown rather than built. They regenerate damage and they spread spores that convert matter into more Vraken tissue. Admiral, we can offer you— We'll take the job, Chen said simply. Telris stared at her. But I haven't told you what we can pay. We have resources, we have technology databases, we can give you— You're our friends, Chen said, and for the first time her face softened slightly. Friends help each other. We'll discuss payment later after your people are safe. When can you send help? Telris asked, hardly daring to hope. Our analysts estimate we have perhaps 2 months before our orbital defenses fail completely. Admiral Chen touched a device on her wrist. Commander Park, initiate full fleet deployment. Set Condition 1 throughout 3rd Fleet. All ships are to begin departure sequences immediately. We launch in 6 hours. Telris felt his legs go weak. 6 hours? But surely you need time to prepare, to plan, to— Ambassador, humanity has been preparing for war since we climbed down from the trees, Chen said. Her eyes were hard now, like polished stone. We're very good at it. My fleet will reach your homeworld in 8 days. Tell your people to hold on. We're coming. The Admiral turned and walked away, already speaking rapidly into her communication device. Telris heard her rattling off orders about ammunition loads, fighter deployments, and marine battalions. The words meant nothing to him, but the tone was unmistakable. This was a predator preparing to hunt. One of Telris's advisors, a young female named Saris, touched his arm. Ambassador, did she just agree to help us? Just like that? I think she did, Telris whispered. He looked out the viewing port at the human station. Already he could see ships beginning to move, lights flickering on across dozens of vessels. By the ancestors, I think she actually did. Over the next hours, Telris watched in amazement as humanity mobilized for war. Ships that had been docked for maintenance were suddenly operational. Crew members rushed through corridors carrying equipment. Supply vessels moved between the warships like busy insects, loading missiles and ammunition and fuel. The Keltheran delegation was given quarters near the observation deck. Telris could not sleep. He stood at the window and watched the fleet assemble. There were huge ships the size of small cities, bristling with guns. There were smaller, faster ships that darted around like predatory fish. There were flat ships that Saris identified as carriers, holding hundreds of small fighter craft inside their bellies. "They're all weapons," Saris said quietly, standing beside him. "Every single ship is designed to destroy things. Look at them. No cargo bays for trade goods, no science laboratories, no diplomatic quarters, just guns and armor and more guns. We asked for warriors," Telris replied. "It appears we found them." A human technician passed by, humming a tune. He was young, barely more than a child by Keltheran standards. He smiled at them and gave a thumbs-up gesture. "Don't worry, sir. We'll take care of those bugs for you. The Marines are itching for a good fight." After he left, Saris looked disturbed. "Did he say they're itching for a fight? Ambassador, are they excited about this?" Telris had no answer. He had spent years studying human culture, but he realized now that he had only seen one side of humanity. He had seen their art galleries and universities. He had attended their concerts and read their poetry. He had never seen this side, the side that built fleets of warships and trained soldiers from childhood. 6 hours after Admiral Chen had agreed to help, the fleet began to move. Telris watched as 126 warships turned away from Earth and pointed toward Keltheran space. The massive engines glowed blue-white as they accelerated. One by one, the ships vanished into faster-than-light travel, leaving streaks of light behind them. The indomitable Admiral Chen's flagship was the last to leave. It was enormous, a dark shape covered in weapons and armor. For just a moment before it jumped, Telris could read the words painted on its hull in huge letters. "Peace through superior firepower." "They're really coming," Saris whispered. "The humans are really coming to save us." Telris felt tears running down his face again, but this time they were tears of hope instead of despair. He touched the window glass gently, as if he could reach across the distance to his doomed homeworld. "Hold on," he whispered to his people. "Light years away. Hold on just a little longer. Help is coming, and it's bringing more guns than the Vraken have ever seen." In 8 days, the Vraken would learn why humanity had no natural predators left on their homeworld. They had eaten them all or turned them into pets. Now those same humans were coming to Kelthera Prime, and they were very, very hungry for a fight. The galaxy was about to witness what happened when someone threatened humanity's friends, and it was not going to be pretty. The Indomitable cut through space at speeds that bent reality itself. Inside the massive dreadnought, Admiral Sarah Chen stood on the command bridge studying the holographic display floating before her. The blue-tinted projection showed the Kelthera system, with angry red dots marking Vraken positions. There were thousands of them swarming around the homeworld like insects around a dying animal. "Status report," Chen said calmly. Her second-in-command, Commander James Park, pulled up data on his screen. "All ships accounted for, Admiral. 126 vessels in formation. We'll reach Keltheran space in 7 days, 16 hours. The engineering crews are already preparing the ammunition factories. We'll be making bullets from processed asteroids when we arrive." Chen nodded. Other species thought it was barbaric that humans still used physical projectiles in space warfare. They preferred clean energy weapons and shields. But humans had learned that nothing beat the simple physics of a heavy object moving really, really fast. A chunk of metal accelerated to 5% of light speed could punch through almost anything in the universe. "What do we know about the enemy?" Chen asked. Park pulled up images of the Vraken. They were nightmarish things, all organic curves and pulsing tissue. The bioships looked like they had been grown rather than built, which was exactly what they were. Each ship was alive in its own way, part of a hive mind that connected all Vraken across space. "Intelligence says they reproduce by consuming biomass," Park explained. "They land spores on planets. The spores convert everything organic into more Vraken tissue. Plants, animals, people, it all becomes food. Once they've eaten a world clean, they move on." "Locusts," Chen said quietly. "That's what they are." "Space locusts. Yes, ma'am. And like locusts, they're very good at eating but not so good at fighting. They've survived by hitting targets that can't fight back. The Keltherans are scholars, not soldiers. The other species the Vraken attacked were all peaceful races. Chen's expression hardened. They're about to learn the difference between peaceful species and humanity. Send a message to all ship captains. I want battle plans ready in 12 hours. And tell the Marine commanders I need to speak with them. Across the fleet, humanity prepared for war with practiced efficiency. This was what they were good at. This was what they had been doing in one form or another for their entire history. On the carrier Valkyrie, Lieutenant Yuki Tanaka sat in the pilot ready room with her squadron. They were reviewing footage of Vraken bioships, studying how they moved, looking for weaknesses. The ships regenerated damage, but they were slow and couldn't change direction quickly. Fighter tactics would work well against them. They're big and dumb, said her wingman, a cocky pilot named Rodriguez. This is going to be like shooting fish in a barrel. Don't get overconfident, Tanaka warned. There's thousands of them. Even dumb enemies can kill you if there's enough of them. Let them come, Rodriguez grinned. I've got 400 missiles with their names on them. The fighter pilots were eager. Most of them had never seen real combat. The last major war had ended 20 years ago, and most of these kids had joined the Navy looking for adventure. Now they were going to get it. Deep in the Indomitable's belly, Captain Marcus Webb briefed his Marines. 200 soldiers sat in the armory, checking their weapons and armor. These were humanity's shock troops, trained to fight in any environment from underwater to zero gravity. They wore powered armor that made them stronger and faster, and they carried enough firepower to level a building. Listen up, Webb said, his voice carrying across the room. The Keltherans are friends of humanity. That means when someone hurts them, they hurt us. The Vraken have killed 3 billion Keltheran civilians. 3 billion. They're not going to kill anymore. We're going to stop them, and we're going to do it in the most permanent way possible. Questions? A young Marine raised her hand. Sir, what if they surrender? Webb's face was grim. Intel says the Vraken are a hive mind. They don't negotiate and they don't surrender. They just eat. We're not going there to arrest them or reform them. We're going there to exterminate them. This is pest control on a galactic scale. Understood. Sir, yes, sir, the Marines shouted in unison. After the briefing, Webb stood alone in the armory for a moment, looking at the rows of weapons. He had fought in 3 wars and a dozen smaller conflicts. He had killed more people than he could count. He thought he was done with this life, but when he heard about what happened to the Keltherans, he had volunteered immediately. Some species in the galaxy thought humans were monsters because they were so good at violence. Webb didn't agree. Monsters killed for pleasure or greed. Humans killed to protect, to defend, to make sure the innocent could sleep safely at night. There was a difference even if other species couldn't see it. His communication device beeped. Captain Webb, this is Admiral Chen. I need you and your company ready for planetary deployment. The Vraken have contaminated several Keltheran cities with their spores. If we don't clean them out, those cities will be lost. We'll be ready, Admiral, Webb replied. How bad is the contamination? Bad. The spores have been growing for weeks. You'll be fighting through organic matter, possibly sentient Vraken organisms. It's going to be ugly. Ugly is what Marines do best, ma'am. As the fleet raced toward Kelthera, word of humanity's response spread through the galaxy. The Galactic Council received reports with disbelief. The humans had mobilized a full fleet in hours? Impossible. Military deployments took months of planning, logistics coordination, supply chain management. You couldn't just launch 100 warships because someone asked nicely, but humans could and did. The Hexapod Collective's military observers studied the recordings of the human fleet departure. They noticed something disturbing. Every human warship had clearly been ready for immediate deployment. The weapons were already loaded. The crews were already trained. The supply chains were already in place. They're always ready for war, one Hexapod analyst said nervously. This isn't a special deployment. This is normal for them. They maintain their entire military at constant readiness, as if they expect to be attacked at any moment. Of course they do, replied the senior analyst. Look at their history. They evolved on a planet that tried to kill them every day. Then they spent 10,000 years killing each other. War isn't something unusual for humans. It's their natural state. Peace is what they find strange. Back on the Indomitable, Admiral Chen received a transmission from Ambassador Telris. The Keltheran's face appeared on her screen, looking even more exhausted than before. Admiral, I have grave news, Telris said. The Vraken have begun their final assault on Kelthara Prime. Our orbital defenses are failing. We have perhaps 3 days before they reach the surface. Can you arrive sooner? Chen did some quick calculations. We can push the engines harder, but it risks damaging them. We'd arrive with less fuel for maneuvering. Please, Telris begged. Every hour means more of my people die. Chen didn't hesitate. We'll be there in 6 days. Tell your people to evacuate the coastal cities and move inland. Focus all your remaining defenses on the capital region. We'll buy you time. Thank you, Admiral. Thank you so much. After the transmission ended, Commander Park looked concerned. Admiral, pushing the engines that hard is dangerous. If we damage our propulsion systems before the battle even starts, then we'll fight with damaged engines, Chen interrupted. Those are living, breathing people dying down there, Commander. We're not going to arrive just in time to count the bodies. Push every engine to the red line. I don't care if we have to limp home afterward. Yes, ma'am. Chen turned back to the holographic display. The red dots had grown larger, spreading across the Keltharan homeworld like a disease. But now there was a blue arrow pointing toward them. A human arrow, carrying more firepower than most species could imagine. The Vraken had no idea what was coming. They had spent centuries eating their way across the galaxy, consuming the weak and the peaceful. They had never encountered a species that fought back with genuine skill and fury. They had never encountered humanity. In 6 days they would learn their mistake, and by then it would be far too late to run. The human fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Kelthara system. For a moment, everyone on the bridge of the Indomitable was silent as they stared at the tactical display. The situation was worse than the reports had suggested. Thousands of Vraken bioships filled the space around Kelthara Prime. The organic vessels pulsed with sick yellow light, their surfaces covered in what looked like veins and tumors. Some were small, the size of fighters. Others were massive, kilometers long, with tentacles that reached out like the arms of dying stars. They had surrounded the planet completely, and organic tendrils were already pushing through the orbital defense platforms. My God, Commander Park whispered. There's so many of them. Admiral Chen's face remained calm, but her eyes were hard. All ships, this is Admiral Chen. We're not here to count them. We're here to kill them. Battle formation Delta 7. Carriers to the rear. Dreadnoughts and cruisers to the front. Destroyers screen the flanks. Launch all fighters when ready. Across the fleet, crews rushed to their stations. The massive ships rearranged themselves into a wall of steel and weapons, pointing directly at the Vraken swarm. Missile tubes opened. Railgun batteries charged. Energy cores hummed as they built up power for the plasma cannons. On the surface of Kelthara Prime, Ambassador Telris watched the human fleet arrive through a viewing screen. He was in an underground bunker with the Keltharan High Council. The orbital bombardment had been getting worse every hour. 3 major cities had already gone silent, consumed by the Vraken spores. The death toll was in the millions and climbing. They came, Telris said, his voice breaking with emotion. The humans actually came. Will it be enough? Asked Premier Kalros, the leader of the Keltharan government. She was old. Her blue skin faded to almost white with age. There are so many of the monsters. I don't know, Telris admitted. But I've watched the humans prepare for war. If anyone can stop the Vraken, it's them. The battle began with a sound like thunder in space. The Indomitable fired its main railgun batteries, and 8 tungsten slugs the size of school buses accelerated to 5% of light speed. The physics were simple and brutal. At that speed, the metal had as much kinetic energy as a small nuclear bomb. When the slugs hit the Vraken bioships, they simply ceased to exist. The organic vessels exploded into clouds of boiling tissue and gas. Reload and fire at will, Chen ordered. All ships open fire. Let's show these things what human engineering can do. The human fleet lit up like a deadly fireworks display. Thousands of missiles launched from their tubes, trailing fire as they accelerated toward the Vraken swarm. The bioships tried to intercept them with organic projectiles, but human missiles were smart. They dodged and weaved, their AI cores calculating trajectories in microseconds. When they hit, they detonated with nuclear fury. The Vraken had never experienced anything like this. Species they had consumed before used energy weapons that their regenerative biology could adapt to. But you couldn't adapt to physics. You couldn't regenerate from a tungsten slug moving at relativistic speeds. You just died. The hive mind was confused. These humans fought with primitive kinetic weapons. But they used them with terrifying precision. Every shot seemed to hit. Every missile found its target. The Vraken had numbers, but the humans had skill and technology perfected over centuries of killing each other. The carriers launched their fighters. 600 small craft poured out of the hangars, forming up in squadrons before diving into the swarm. Lieutenant Tanaka was in the lead group, her heart pounding with adrenaline as she locked onto her first target. "Tango Squadron, weapons free," she called over the radio. "Let's go hunting." Her fighter was small and fast, covered in armor and bristling with missiles. She flew toward a medium-sized bioship that was trying to regenerate from damage. Her targeting computer painted it red and she launched 4 missiles. They spiraled through space, avoiding the Vraken's defensive spores, and slammed into the bioship's core. The explosion was beautiful and terrible, like a flower made of fire. "Splash one," Tanaka reported, already turning toward the next target. Her hands were steady on the controls. This was what she had trained for. This was what she was good at. Around her, the other pilots were equally efficient. They worked in pairs, covering each other, taking down the smaller bioships while the capital ships handled the larger ones. Some of the pilots were singing over the radio, old military songs from Earth. Others were joking, keeping their spirits up. One pilot named Rodriguez was keeping count of his kills like it was a sport. "That's 15 for me," Rodriguez called out. "Anyone keeping up?" "Focus on your job, Rodriguez," Tanaka snapped. But she was smiling inside her helmet. The confidence was good. Fear made you slow, made you hesitate. These pilots didn't hesitate. The Vraken tried to fight back. They launched swarms of smaller organisms, living projectiles that tried to latch onto the human ships. But human point defense systems were incredible. Automated guns tracked every threat, firing thousands of rounds per second. The organic projectiles were shredded before they could get close. Some bioships tried ramming attacks, using their mass as a weapon. They accelerated toward the human cruisers, hoping to crash into them and spread their infectious spores. The cruisers simply moved aside with maneuvering thrusters, then shot the bioships in the back as they passed. It was like watching a bullfighter dodge a charging bull, then stab it as it ran by. Deep in the heart of Kelthera Prime's orbital stations, Captain Webb and his Marines were fighting a different kind of battle. The Vraken had managed to land spores on several of the platforms days before the humans arrived. The spores had grown, spreading organic matter through the corridors like a cancer. Webb and his company moved through the contaminated sections in their powered armor, flamethrowers burning away the alien tissue. The organic matter tried to fight back, forming crude tentacles and trying to grab the Marines. It was useless. Human armor was designed to operate in the vacuum of space in acid rain, in temperatures that would boil water. Some sticky alien plants weren't going to stop them. "Keep moving," Webb ordered. "Don't let any of that biomass remain. If even a single spore survives, it'll start growing again." His Marines worked systematically, burning everything that looked even slightly organic. They planted explosive charges at key points, preparing to destroy entire sections of the station if necessary. It was brutal work, but it was necessary. The Vraken could not be allowed to establish a foothold. In one corridor they found something horrible. Keltheran civilians who had been caught by the spores. The bodies were half converted, organic matter growing through them, changing them into something alien. Some were still barely alive, moaning in pain. "Sir," one of his Marines said quietly. "Should we—" "Yes," Webb said, his voice heavy. "It's a mercy at this point." "Make it quick." The Marines did what had to be done. Webb turned away, his jaw clenched. This was the reality of war. Not the glory, not the victory parades. This, the hard choices. The things that would give him nightmares for years. He keyed his radio. "Admiral Chen, this is Captain Webb. Station 7 is lost. The contamination is too deep. Request permission to destroy the entire platform." Chen's voice came back immediately. "Permission granted, Captain. Evacuate your people and blow it. We're not leaving any Vraken presence behind." "Understood, ma'am." "Webb out." The Marines placed their charges and retreated. From a safe distance, they watched as the station exploded, taking the Vraken contamination with it. It was a small victory in a battle of thousands of small victories. In space, the tide was turning. The human fleet was cutting through the Vraken swarm like a knife. Bioships that had taken weeks to grow were being destroyed in seconds. The hive mind was beginning to understand that it had made a terrible mistake. These humans were not like other species. They didn't fight defensively, trying to minimize casualties. They fought to win, and they didn't care what it cost. Admiral Chen watched the tactical display with satisfaction. The red dots were disappearing, replaced by debris fields, but she knew this was just the beginning. The Vraken still had thousands of bioships, and they were starting to adapt. Some of the larger vessels were merging together, forming superorganisms that were harder to kill. "They're getting smarter," Commander Park observed. "Look at that. They're concentrating their forces." "Good," Chen said coldly. "When the enemy groups up, it makes them easier to target. Prepare the Sunbreakers. It's time to show them what antimatter can do." The order went out to the fleet. Deep in the Indomitable's weapons bay, crews began preparing humanity's most powerful weapons. Antimatter warheads, each one capable of destroying a small moon. They were expensive, difficult to make, and absolutely devastating. The Vraken had wanted a fight. Humanity was going to give them one they would never forget, assuming any of them survived long enough to remember it. The Vraken hive mind had consumed 17 species across 300 years. It knew hunger, it knew growth, it knew how to spread across stars like a living plague. But it had never known fear. Not until now. The merged superorganisms floated in space, each one formed from hundreds of smaller bioships. They were massive things, 10 kilometers long, pulsing with diseased light. The hive mind had calculated that size and mass would overwhelm the human weapons. Other species had broken when faced with such monsters. The humans would break too. The calculation was wrong. Admiral Chen watched the Vraken superorganisms form on her tactical display. She almost smiled, almost. "Target those large formations. Prepare Sunbreaker missiles." "Full spread, Admiral," Commander Park said carefully. "Those are antimatter weapons. In atmosphere, the fallout—" "We're not in atmosphere, Commander. And those things need to die. Now. Launch when ready." The Indomitable and 3 other dreadnoughts fired simultaneously. 12 missiles, each carrying a small amount of antimatter suspended in magnetic fields. They looked almost beautiful as they flew through space, leaving trails of light behind them. The Vraken tried to intercept them with organic matter, but the missile's shielding was too strong. When matter and antimatter meet, they annihilate each other. All the mass converts to pure energy, following Einstein's famous equation. A tiny amount of antimatter releases more energy than a nuclear bomb. The Sunbreakers each carried enough antimatter to sterilize a city. The explosions were like new stars being born. White light flooded the space around Kelthera Prime. The superorganisms simply vanished, converted to superheated plasma in microseconds. The shockwaves rolled outward, destroying smaller bioships for hundreds of kilometers in every direction. On the surface, Keltherans in the underground bunkers felt the ground shake. They looked at each other in terror and hope. What kind of weapons were the humans using? Ambassador Telris watched the battle through the viewing screens, his mouth hanging open. He had seen the calculations of what antimatter could do, but seeing it in reality was something else. The humans had just erased the largest Vraken organisms like they were wiping dust off a table. "They're not just fighting," Premier Kalros whispered. "They're not even just winning. They're executing them. Like this is routine." "For humans," Telris said slowly. "I think it is." In space, the Vraken hive mind was experiencing something new, not just fear now, but doubt. Every tactical adaptation it tried, the humans countered immediately. When it sent swarms, the humans used area weapons. When it used large organisms, they used antimatter. When it tried to retreat, human destroyers cut off the escape routes. The hive mind reached out across space trying to communicate with the human fleet. It broadcast images of suffering, of hunger, of simple organisms trying to survive. It tried to show that it only acted from need, from instinct, that killing was natural. On the Indomitable, the communications officer looked up in surprise. "Admiral, we're receiving a transmission from the Vraken. It's trying to talk to us." Chen walked over to the console. The message was crude, images and emotions rather than words. The Vraken was asking for mercy, claiming it was just following its nature, that it needed to feed to live. Several of her officers looked uncomfortable. One of them, a young lieutenant, spoke up hesitantly. "Admiral, maybe we should listen." "If they're willing to communicate, no," Chen said flatly. She pulled up images on the main screen. Kelthera 7, a beautiful ocean world, now a dead rock covered in organic matter. Kelthera 12, where 2 billion people had lived, now silent. The recordings from the orbital stations. where Keltheran children had been slowly converted into alien biomass while still alive. They want to talk now that they're losing, Chen said, her voice cold enough to freeze helium. Where was their mercy when they were eating worlds? Where was their communication when they killed 5 billion innocent people? They're not sorry for what they did. They're just sorry we're making them pay for it. She turned to her communications officer. Send them one message. Tell them that nature doesn't build battleships. We do, and we've decided their nature ends today. Then cut the channel. The young lieutenant swallowed hard. Some of the other officers looked grim, but none of them argued. They had all seen the reports. They had all seen what the Fracken did to living worlds. Some things couldn't be forgiven. Some threats had to be ended permanently. On the planet's surface, Captain Webb and his Marines were fighting through the contaminated cities. The Fracken spores had spread through the sewers and underground tunnels, creating a nightmare landscape of organic tissue and twisted metal. Webb's company moved through it methodically, their flamethrowers turning the alien matter to ash. They found civilians hiding in basements, terrified Keltharans who had been trapped when the contamination started. Webb's Marines escorted them to evacuation points, their armor making them look like protective monsters. The Keltharans were afraid of the humans at first, these armored giants carrying weapons of fire, but they quickly realized the Marines were there to help. It's okay, Webb told a group of Keltharan children through his armor's speaker. He tried to make his voice gentle, though it was hard through the electronic filter. You're safe now. We're going to get you out of here. One of the children, a small female with bright blue skin, looked up at him with huge eyes. Are you going to kill all the bad things? Webb knelt down, his armor servos whining. Yes, little one. We're going to kill all the bad things. That's what we're good at. The fighting in the cities was hard and brutal. The Vrakan tissue sometimes formed crude organisms, masses of flesh that tried to attack the Marines. They weren't very effective. Human weapons were designed to kill other humans, which meant they were devastating against almost anything. Armor-piercing rounds tore through organic matter like paper. Plasma cutters could slice through meters of alien tissue in seconds, but it was exhausting work. The Marines fought for hours, clearing one building after another. They were making progress, but slowly. Every corridor had to be checked. Every basement had to be cleared. If they missed even a small patch of Vrakan spores, it would start growing again. Webb's second-in-command, Lieutenant Sarah Martinez, wiped alien tissue off her armor's visor. Sir, at this rate, it'll take us weeks to clear all the contaminated zones. Then we have weeks, Webb replied. We didn't come this far to do half a job. The Keltharans are our friends, Martinez. We're going to save their world or die trying. Yes, sir. In space, the battle was entering its final phase. The human fleet had destroyed over 2,000 Fracken bioships. The survivors were starting to break formation, trying to scatter and escape. But Admiral Chen had planned for this. Human destroyers were positioned throughout the system, waiting. Every escape route was covered. They're running, Commander Park reported. The main swarm is breaking up. Don't let them, Chen ordered. All ships pursue and destroy. I want every single Vrakan organism in this system dead. If even one escapes, it could start this all over again somewhere else. The human fleet split up, each squadron chasing different groups of fleeing bioships. The fighters were especially effective, their speed allowing them to catch the slower Vrakan vessels. Lieutenant Tanaka and her squadron hunted down a group of 50 bioships trying to reach the system's edge. They destroyed them all in 20 minutes. That's 47 kills for me, Rodriguez called over the radio. He sounded tired now, the initial excitement wearing off. They had been fighting for 18 hours straight. I think I'm going to sleep for a week after this. Focus, Rodriguez, Tanaka said, though she felt the exhaustion too. We're not done yet. Back on Kelthera Prime, Ambassador Telris received reports from across the planet. The human Marines had cleared 3 cities completely. 2 more were nearly done. The orbital defenses were being rebuilt by human engineering crews. The Vrakan presence in the system was being systematically destroyed. We're going to survive, Premier Calros said, tears streaming down her face. By all the ancestors, we're actually going to survive this. Telris nodded, but he was thinking about the cost. The humans were saving his people, yes, but they were doing it with a level of violence that shocked him to his core. The antimatter weapons alone had probably killed more Fracken biomass than his entire species had ever killed anything in their whole history. Humanity was terrifying. But they were terrifying on behalf of their friends. And that made all the difference. The battle raged on through the day and into the night. The human fleet showed no signs of stopping, no signs of mercy. They had come to Kelthera to do a job, and they were going to finish it. Every Vrakan bioship, every spore, every piece of alien tissue was marked for destruction. And the Vrakan, who had thought themselves the ultimate predators, learned what it meant to become prey. The Vrakan hive mind was dying, and it knew it. For the first time in its long existence, it understood mortality. The humans were not just winning the battle. They were committing genocide with the efficiency of a machine. The last major concentration of Vrakan bioships was trapped near Kelthera's binary star system. Admiral Chen had executed a maneuver called the Anvil, using her fleet to drive the fleeing bioships toward the gravitational well of the two stars. The Vrakan had tried to escape into faster-than-light travel, but human destroyers had systematically destroyed their FTL organs with precision strikes. Now they were trapped, caught between the crushing gravity of two suns and a human fleet that showed no mercy. "Admiral," Commander Park said, studying his tactical display. "They're trying to communicate again. Multiple transmissions. They're broadcasting on every frequency." "Ignore them," Chen said. "Status on our weapons? Railguns at 70% charge. Missile tubes reloading. We have enough ammunition for another 6 hours of sustained fire. The fighters are returning to rearm." Chen nodded. "When the fighters are reloaded, we begin the final assault. I want every ship focusing fire on that cluster." "No survivors, Park, not one." Park hesitated. "Admiral, they're clearly trying to surrender. Don't we have an obligation?" "An obligation to who?" Chen interrupted, her voice sharp. "To the hive mind that ate 5 billion Keltherans? To the species that leaves dead worlds in its wake? They're not soldiers, Park. They're not even criminals. They're a plague, and you don't negotiate with disease. You eradicate it." Park swallowed hard but nodded. "Yes, ma'am." The final assault began 30 minutes later. 600 human fighters dove into the Vrakan cluster like hunting raptors. Behind them came the capital ships, their weapons blazing. The space near the binary stars lit up with explosions as bioship after bioship died. The Vrakan tried to fight back, but they had nothing left. Their numbers were too depleted, their organisms too damaged. The hive mind fragmented as more and more bioships were destroyed, losing cohesion. What remained were just scared animals, running from predators they couldn't escape. Lieutenant Tanaka felt no joy as she launched her missiles into another bioship. She was too tired for emotion. Her body ached from the high-G maneuvers. Her eyes burned from staring at screens for so long, but she kept fighting because that's what had to be done. "Tango leader to all fighters," she called over the radio. "One more push. Let's finish this." Her squadron acknowledged and dove back into the fight. Around them, the other fighter groups were doing the same. Humans didn't quit. It wasn't in their nature. When they decided to do something, they did it completely. On the Indomitable, Admiral Chen watched as the last few hundred bioships were systematically destroyed. The ship's AI was already calculating the debris field, making sure no organic matter survived. They would sweep the entire system afterward, looking for any trace of Vrakan tissue. Anything they found would be incinerated. "Admiral," the communications officer said quietly, "the Keltherans are asking about the survivors. They want to know if any of the Vrakan will be captured for study." Chen's expression didn't change. "Tell them there won't be any survivors. This threat ends here permanently." The final Vrakan bioship died 6 hours later. It was a small one, barely the size of a shuttle trying to hide in the shadow of a moon. A human destroyer found it with sensors and destroyed it with a single railgun shot. The hive mind, which had once connected thousands of organisms across light years, went silent forever. In the command center on Kelthera Prime, Ambassador Telris watched the tactical display as the last red dot disappeared. For a moment, nobody spoke. Then someone started crying. Then someone else. Within seconds, the entire command center was filled with tears and embraces. They had survived. Against impossible odds, they had survived. Premier Kalros pulled herself together first. She activated the planetary communication system. "People of Kelthera, this is your premier. The Vrakan are gone. The humans have destroyed them. We are safe. We are alive. And we owe everything to our friends from Earth." Across the planet, billions of Keltherans celebrated. In the underground bunkers, in the ruined cities, in the refugee camps, people cried and laughed and held each other. Some of them had lost family members. Many had lost their homes. But they were alive. and that was more than they had dared hope for a week ago. Captain Webb and his Marines were still working, clearing the last contaminated zones. They had been fighting for 3 days straight, surviving on combat drugs and determination. When the message came through that the space battle was over, Webb's company stopped their work and just stood there for a moment. "We did it," Lieutenant Martinez said, her voice hollow with exhaustion. "We actually did it." "We did our job," Webb corrected. "That's all. Come on, we still have 2 more buildings to clear." But even he allowed himself a small smile inside his helmet. This was why he had become a Marine, not for the glory or the excitement. For moments like this when good people got to live because bad things died. Admiral Chen held a meeting with her command staff after the battle ended. They looked exhausted, all of them. Some had minor injuries. All of them had that distant look that came from seeing too much combat. "Status report," Chen said. "Give me the numbers." Commander Park pulled up the data. "We destroyed 3,742 Vrakan bioships. Total. Our losses, 14 fighters, 2 destroyers damaged but repairable, 0 fatalities among ship crews. The Marines lost 38 soldiers in the ground fighting. Ammunition expenditure was within projections. We can remain in the system for another 3 months if needed." Chen nodded slowly. 38 dead, 38 families who would get letters, 38 funeral services with folded flags. It was a light casualty count for such a large battle, but it still hurt. Every one of those soldiers had been under her command. "Draft commendations for the fighter squadrons," she said, "and I want full honors for the Marines we lost. They died saving an entire species. Make sure the Keltherans know their names." "Yes, Admiral." 3 days later, Admiral Chen met with Ambassador Telris and Premier Kalros in the rebuilt orbital station. The Keltherans looked better now. Some color returned to their skin, though the trauma was still clear in their eyes. "Admiral Chen," Premier Kalros said formally, "the Keltheran people owe you a debt we can never repay. You saved us from extinction. Name your price." "Anything we have is yours," Chen shook her head. "We didn't come here for payment. We came because you asked for help and you're our friends. That's enough. But surely, if you want to thank us," Chen interrupted gently, "then rebuild, thrive. Remember what happened here, but don't let it break you. The best thanks we could get is knowing you survived and grew stronger." Telris wiped his eyes. "We will remember, Admiral. Every Keltheran child will learn about this, about the day humanity answered our call, about the day you showed the galaxy what true friendship means." Chen smiled slightly. "Just make sure they learn the full lesson, Ambassador. We're friendly, we're peaceful when we can be, but we're also very, very dangerous when our friends are threatened. That message needs to spread through the galaxy." "It will," Kalros promised. "I will make sure it does." The human fleet remained in Keltheran space for 2 more weeks, helping to rebuild defenses and clear the last traces of Vrakan contamination. Human engineers worked alongside Keltheran workers, building new orbital platforms. Human medical teams treated the wounded and traumatized. Human soldiers trained Keltheran volunteers in basic defense tactics. When it was finally time to leave, half the planet turned out to watch. Millions of Keltherans stood in the streets and parks, waving at the human ships as they prepared to depart. Children held signs with messages of thanks in both Keltheran and English. Artists had already begun creating monuments, massive statues showing human soldiers standing protectively over Keltheran families. On the Indomitable, Admiral Chen looked down at the planet one last time. They had done good work here. They had saved billions of lives. They had shown the galaxy that humanity would stand by its friends no matter the cost. "Set course for Earth," she ordered. "Take us home, Commander." The fleet departed, leaving behind a grateful species and a clear warning to the rest of the galaxy. The news of what happened at Kelthera spread quickly through the known stars. The Galactic Council held an emergency session to discuss the human problem. The Hexapod Collective proposed sanctions against humanity for using excessive force. The Vryn Empire suggested restrictions on human weapon development. Several other species agreed that humanity needed to be controlled before they became a threat. Then the Keltheran delegation stood up. Ambassador Telris, his voice carrying through the chamber, told them exactly what had happened. How the Council had abandoned Kelthera. How humanity had responded in hours while others debated for months. How human weapons, called excessive and brutal, had been precisely what was needed to stop the Vraken forever. You call them dangerous, Telris finished, his voice ringing with emotion. You're right. They are dangerous. They're dangerous to anyone who threatens the innocent. They're dangerous to those who prey on the weak. And yes, they're dangerous to anyone who would harm their friends. I say thank the stars they are.